Hey, it's James from Marketing for Restaurants here, and welcome to episode 86 of Secret Sauce, the restaurant marketing podcast, restaurant ideas from Princess Cruises.
Some restaurants are quiet, lose money, and the owner works 70 hours a week. Other restaurants are busy, profitable, and the owners work a few hours a day. What's the difference? They have a secret sauce. Join James from Marketing for Restaurants as he helps you come up with your recipe for restaurant success. Your secret sauce.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you're enjoying our current series of podcasts, the Restaurant Business Plan series. I thought I'd take a little bit of a break with a couple of other podcasts, a couple that I've been meaning to do for a while and just haven't gotten around to doing it. So I thought I'd bang out a couple of quick ones now. The first one is going to be around some ideas that I got from the time that we spent on our cruise with Princess Cruises. So an epic time that we had. We were able to do 2 back-to-back cruises out of Singapore. So obviously that's where we got the ideas, the experiences that we had for the restaurants in Singapore, and also as we traveled around lots of Asian countries and got to experience some amazing food there. So what I wanted to delve into is what it is that they do on Princess Cruises, why they do it, and some of the things that you can take from cruising and the kind of things that they do there. And because they do a really cracking job of it. If you haven't been on a cruise, I would highly suggest it. It really is an epic way to sort of not only unwind, but also to experience some exciting parts of the world. Now, the first thing about this is I was talking to a restaurant owner about it, and he said, yeah, but why look at cruises? Because everyone has to eat. It's kind of a captive audience. It's not like they're fighting for people to come into their restaurant. And I think that really there's a lot more thinking about this process that we can do about cruises in general, but about your restaurant and its relationship with other businesses, other industries in general. And it always reminds me of a story that I read about when I was doing my MBA, and it was about Southwest Airlines. I don't know why, but we did about 5 case studies on airlines when I was doing my MBA, so I had quite a bit of an idea about how airlines operate. This one was about Southwest, though. So Southwest Airlines in the United States, a very, very profitable airline. They're very successful. Partially it's about their culture, and partially it's about their operational efficiencies. Now, where does that operational efficiency come from? So, if you don't know the story of Southwest, they spent a lot of time in courts before they ever got to fly an aircraft, and they were always really, really cash-strapped. And the thinking was, once they actually started flying, once they got court approval to be able to start doing that, they needed to milk out every single cent that they could from the aircraft. Now, there was a realization by Herb Kelleher and his ops team that an aircraft on the ground does not make any money. So as soon as the aircraft gets on the ground, they want to get it back into the air as quickly as possible. So this is in, I think, probably around the early 70s, and the industry standard was between 40 minutes to 60 minutes to turn an aircraft around. Now, if you're doing short-haul flights, and you can cut that down significantly, then you potentially are going to be able to squeeze an extra flight per aircraft per day. Now, the time that we're thinking of, they had about 3 aircraft. They just sold one because things were not going well. They weren't making money. They'd already benchmarked themselves against other airlines. And other airlines, this is where they got that figure of 40 to 60 minutes to refuel an aircraft, unload the passengers, and get the fresh passengers on. And they were at the bottom end of that. They were around 40 minutes. And then there was this realization that they were doing things really, really well, but that wasn't good enough for them because the way that their business was structured, they just weren't going to be able to make money out of it. So this came to the problem then, well, who is it that turns around? So we're doing the best in the industry. So obviously the industry best is not good enough for us. We need to redefine what industry best is, which I think is a really bold kind of thinking. And I think I would challenge every small business owner to be thinking about these things because you've got the flexibility there. Now, Southwest Airlines, they're an airline. They've got 3, big aircraft, but still in the airline space, very much a small business, able to really tap into that entrepreneurial spirit and able to influence their culture to be able to make the kind of changes that they needed to be able to make to be able to get their aircraft back around as quickly as possible. So what did they do? They asked the question, well, what is it that we're trying to do here? And they've got a complicated machine that they're trying to turn around as quickly as possible. So what they're doing is they're defocusing what it was that they wanted to do. They started to be, how do we turn around an aircraft really quickly? Well, how do we turn something around that's complex really quickly? Who does that? Who does a good job of that? And then they looked at, one of the answers was, well, what about a NASCAR pit crew? It's like, well, yeah, those guys do that really, really quickly. How do they do that? So what is it that they do in that process? What are the things that enable them to do that? And, there's a couple of things. One, there's a big sense of urgency. None of those guys are sitting there. As the car is coming into the pit, everyone is ready, primed to go. So they are standing there waiting for the aircraft. The car isn't waiting for them. They're waiting for the car. Cross-training. So a lot of people are cross-trained to do something. If someone needs to fill the petrol tank and the guy who's filling the petrol tank is doing something else, because there's a lot of jobs there and there's a limited amount of space around a car. You can't have 20 people around it. There's just not enough space. You can't get that many people there. And on top of that, it's inefficient. You don't want to have 20 people waiting there for a very small amount of time. So they cross-trained everyone to be able to do everyone else's jobs. Lastly, there was a culture that had that sense of urgency of getting the car out as quickly as possible. And so what they thought was, this could actually work for us. So they started to cross-train people. So the person who checked you in and checked your baggage in, they might go and collect your ticket as you're getting into the plane. They may clean the plane. There's a few things that you need to do. You need to clean the plane. You need to get the garbage off. You need to get the fresh food on. All of those sort of things. You need to load baggage. So cross-training was done. And it was fairly easy. So one of the things when you're trying to change the culture of an organisation, the first thing you want to do is to create a burning deck. That's one of the ways that you can do change management. And Southwest always had that sort of backs to the wall type mentality. We're trying to do something different. We're trying to democratise flight for people. So we're going to make it cheap and affordable for people who might not be within reach for them. And it's going to be really tough. So it's backs against the wall. We've got to really fight for this. So their culture was kind of enabling them to be able to do this, because one of the really, really, really big changes was that if a pilot had a hold-up and that was, that they were behind loading bags, he would go and load bags. So he would help clean the plane, a lot of things. And so pilots, this is one of the big changes in the airline industry. Generally, the pilot was the guy who flew the aircraft. So obviously his main job is flying the aircraft, getting it ready for a safe and orderly departure from the gate. But when he was ready to do that, he would then go and lend a hand, or before he started doing that, he would lend a hand for the other people who were trying to do their job. Now, the results, they kind of speak for themselves. So, and I don't know how long it is now, but I think they've had like 29 years of continual profitable years, which in the airline industry, that's really, really difficult to do. The business model has been imitated by a lot of airlines, and I think it's always a really easy thing to see about how successful they are when you see what it is that the pilots are doing, because that's probably the hardest change that you want to make in the airline industry, is to get your pilots to actually do non-piloting stuff. And I think that is a really, really good story that highlights the fact that, in your industry, plus or minus 10, plus or minus 20%, you're probably doing what everyone else is doing. So you might be average or you might be epic, but it's not a game-changing amount. When you're looking for those really, really big changes to the way that you do your work, then you want to look outside of your industry, because outside of the industry, there's going to be people who think about problems very, very different to what you do. So now, those problems aren't going to be exactly the same, because as you can see, it's only the airline industry that turns aircraft around. That's by definition, it's only the airline industry. But there's lots of people who turn around big, complicated machines. So what are the things that you do in your business, in your restaurant, and what happens when you defocus that statement a little bit? So we provide on-demand manufacturing for a range of products with perishable inputs for a fickle audience. Now, that's a defocused statement of what a restaurant does a lot of the time. Who else is there that deals with perishable inputs? Who is there? How does on-demand manufacturing work? How is it done what is the technology that's used around it? What are the processes around it? How do you train your team to be able to do on-demand manufacturing? I'm sure there's 101 things out there that you can, when you start thinking like that, you think, wow, that'd be interesting, And I think it's partially around, the technologies and the processes. How do you build a team? And I think because the restaurant industry is one of those industries that realistically lags in building high-performance cultures. There's a lot of other organisations out there that do things very differently and achieve often really good successes when they're trying to build a high-performance team. And that's why we want to have a look at what Princess Cruises did. So it was about 25 days on the Sapphire Princess, so starting out from Singapore. And it was a really, really great time. As you probably will, if you've listened to the other podcast, then you'll know everyone in the family enjoyed it a lot more than me because I was dying from some sort of horrible pneumonia and coughing up blood at the time. So I was on a first name basis with the lovely people in the medical centre there. That was fantastic. I didn't even know you could get a chest x-ray on a ship, but yes, you can. That was exciting. That was probably a fact I didn't need to know. But there you go. You never can tell. You never know your luck in the big city. So what did we learn then? The first thing that I want to talk about was the food. So the food, they put a really big effort into the food because the food is a really big part of the positioning of the cruise line. We're lucky this is probably our third cruise, I think, third or fourth. And when people sit down and when you start talking to people, obviously, how many cruises have you done? What other cruise lines have you done? And one of the things, realistically, it's a boat and it takes you to places. That's what cruising is. So they're all boats. They all take you to places. So when you're comparing them, it needs to be, you're going to start looking for the things that differentiate one service offering to another. And food is a really, really big part of that. So it's not the huge part of it, but it's a significant part. And now, which is slightly different for a restaurant, because obviously food is a huge part of what you do. Now, it's not the whole part a lot of the time, and sometimes it's not even half of it. Sometimes it's the experience that you're offering. But it is a little bit flipped there because people are thinking the food is just one component of the kind of thing that is offered there. In the main dining room, we ate mainly in the main dining room. Extremely high quality food, very, very nice. It was often quite difficult to choose which one that you wanted to eat. And so this is one thing that's actually a little bit different. Food costs aren't huge when it comes to the overall costs in a restaurant. They're a lot smaller when it's the overall cost of a cruise line, which gives you a really interesting little thing that you can do in a cruise line, and that is you can offer extra main meals. So there was a couple of times when, and I think it was Will, my son, sort of discovered at first, I can't decide between this and this, and he said, would you like me to bring both of them? And Will's eyes lit up and it was like, really? And it was like, yeah, I'll sort of made out he was kind of like sneaking out an extra plate, which I'm sure he wasn't sneaking out an extra plate. I'm sure there's plenty of them there that are available to just this kind of thing because they want to make you feel special. This is the experience that they're trying to create around the food. A couple of ways that the seating is done, which I think, is replicated in some restaurants. So we had our fixed table and our fixed time. We like to go early because that meant that we could then go and see the first show. So there were 2 shows each night. The entertainment is amazing on these cruise ships. It really is. A lot of effort goes into the stage shows, whether it's a comedy act or almost a full Broadway show. Lots of singing, lots of dancing, great music. So that was kind of our routine. And so we wanted to be able to go in and have our dinner early. One of the other options, though, is that you could just line up. There usually wasn't too big of a line, and they would seat you with other people. So particularly for couples, this was a good way of them going out and meeting other people. So there were some big tables with lots of people on them, and everyone was sort of meeting people. So quite a community. And this is the kind of shared table type arrangement that you see in some restaurants. Now, when you think about it, that shared table really is the opportunity for people to go out and meet other people. If there's a business person who's traveling into a city that he's not familiar with and he just wants to sit down, have a few drinks and talk to someone else, this is that perfect kind of opportunity. And this is the way that you want to sort of delve into the experiences that not only are you providing, but that your customers are looking for. And, that kind of thing, it really is important that you understand what it is that your customers are buying. I know we've talked about a local cafe that near our old offices where sometimes when our meeting room was full, we would go to the local cafe. Now, we weren't the only people who did that. There was a lot of people who were using this as a meeting room, effectively. And the thing that I found really annoying, and I didn't go there that often because I found it so annoying, was the fact that the music was playing really, really loud. And we would go in there and there would be maybe 10 groups of 2, 3, 4 people, and they were sitting there. They were having a coffee. They might have been having lunch, but people had laptops out doing PowerPoint presentations. There were people taking notes. People were having conversations. They were having meetings, and yet the music was so loud. And that was because this cafe just didn't understand what it was that they offered and what people were going there to purchase. It was an outsourced meeting room. That's an interesting thing if you are thinking about trying to grow your lunch business and you've got the businesses around you. How do you make an experience that is conducive for people to be able to have that experience? And a hint, don't play the music really loud. So the menu in the main dining room, really, really quite good. They've got a signature chef who has helped work with that. That's Curtis Stone, Australia's own Curtis Stone. So he has designed some of the meals there. They did quite a good job of describing each of the meals, particularly their signature meals, really quite sumptuous descriptions of it. And I think far too much effort is not enough effort is made a lot of the time when you're describing a meal that you want people to order, particularly, if you've done your menu engineering and your costings, you want to be driving people to a menu item. That menu item really should have a description that makes people want to fall in love with it. A lot of people don't do that, and that's an easy win for you to be able to do. One thing that they did in the main dining room as well is they had theme nights. So there might be an Italian night where there was lots of Italian food that was there for to sample. And so there was a special menu, Italian flags, the waiters were dressed up in special clothes, all of those sort of things. Now, I think, obviously, you don't want to be doing this too often, but this is the kind of easy event that you could run to drive people on your quiet nights. Now, if you've got an email list of 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 people, it's really easy. So we're having an Italian night. We're going to have some Italian wines from this winemaker, and this winemaker. And we're going to be cooking this, and this. We're going to be using an old Italian recipe, plus or minus, getting in. Imagine if you swapped chefs for a night with a local Italian restaurant. So we're getting a chef in from a local pizzeria, and he's going to be cooking up this, and this. A lot of ways that you could spin this, and you're getting cross-promotional. If you're doing a cross-promotional thing with another restaurant, that's even better. But you don't even need to do that. You might just be cooking the pizza and the pasta and some great Italian seafood recipes, married up with some wine, a little bit of information about why it is that you've done that, what your inspiration was, and you're good to go with that. And that's a really good Tuesday night activity. If it's successful, it might be once a month. And that means that 1 out of 4 Tuesday nights is going to be crackingly good. We're starting to impact your profit and loss. We're starting to impact the amount of money that you take home. This is the whole thing about what we want to be looking at when you're going and looking at someone else's business. These are the things you want to be doing to try and drive some extra revenue to the bottom line. This is something that was really... I loved watching people, and I think anyone who runs a business, you've got to be a people watcher, particularly when you're running a business like a restaurant. You've got to be a person watcher. And this was one that I loved doing. They had a pool, and right near the pool, there was a burger bar, pizzas, there was a few other bits and pieces that you could get. And this meant that you could get lunch or dinner while you were lazing next to the pool. How cool is that? Now, not only that, Princess, they went that one step further. There's a massive television screen above the pool. So at night, you're sitting there, and of course there was a bar there as well. So at night, you could sit there with a beer in one hand, a burger in the other, while you were watching TV as the ship is cruising the seven seas. Now, that is pretty sweet. That is a really good experience. And I know that, they had some movies on, they had some funny stuff. I spent one night there with Lizzie, my daughter, and we were watching a TV show that had voiceovers for animals, and there was a beatboxing squirrel, which Lizzie just loved. We're having dinner there, or a few drinks. I think we had a few drinks while you're watching that. Now, that's a really great experience that you've created for your customers. And the kids loved it, particularly when you're looking at the demographic. Princess, they really do go after the family market quite aggressively. That is the perfect kind of thing that you want to be providing to your customers to make it a little bit different. Now, while we're talking about family friendly, another thing that they did was that they had this kids activities plan. And it was interesting. So we were there for two cruises. So we went from Singapore around Asia, and then we came back to Singapore. Most of the people got off and some new people got on. For the first cruise, our kids, a little bit hesitant. They stayed with us pretty much most of the time. For the second cruise, they discovered the kids' activities, and we'd be having dinner and they're like, oh, I've got to go because I've got stuff on. And it was like, oh, okay. And Tina and I, we'd be in bed before the kids came back because they were out enjoying the ship, enjoying all of the activities that were available there. We would often not see them for 8 hours because they'd just be out and about while enjoying themselves, which meant that you can then, it makes it very easy for adults to go away and, have some quiet time, whether it's, let's go to the bar and enjoy a few drinks, let's sit out by the pool without the kids being there. So once again, another way that they have really got that good understanding of the kind of experiences that their guests want to be able to achieve. And, you don't want to be having an argument with your kids about you need to go into kids club because mummy and daddy want some time alone. The kids were actively looking for the opportunities to go to kids club because the stuff that they were doing there was so cool. They were out making friends, doing all sorts of stuff, the tours around the ship, lots of things for them to be able to do, which meant the parents could then go and enjoy things like the food and have a dinner because, how often is it that parents get to have a meal without their kids? That in a lot of families, that's quite a rare occurrence. Now, when you're talking about quite a rare occurrence, that is code for something that some people are prepared to pay quite a bit of money for. Interesting. Now, the interesting thing about the profitability for these ships is that most of the food was free. So you could just go up and get a burger. The main dining room, free. They had the specialty restaurants. There was a small surcharge with those, but it was really quite low when you consider the quality of food that is meant to be in them. Now, I don't know, because they were so popular that we were slow in making our bookings, which meant that we weren't able to get in on any of them, which was quite a travesty for us. We were really quite looking forward to it. They had one that was a chef's table where you got to see the food being prepared. Then you ate with the head chef of the ship. I was really keen on doing that. I think that would have been an awesome experience. But because of the fact that I was slowly dying from pneumonia, we took our time making the booking, probably because Tina wasn't sure if I was going to make it or not. It had booked out. And so by the time I was slowly on the mend, the specialty restaurants had booked out. They were really, really, really popular. Even then, the surcharge for them wasn't that much. So a lot of the upsell was around the alcohol. An extensive wine menu was available by the glass, by the bottle. They would actually store the wine for you. So if you bought a bottle and didn't drink the whole thing, they would store it for you and they would bring it out the next night for you if you wanted to, which I thought was an interesting service. The happy hours were quite popular. They had one at 11 o'clock, but we were normally in bed by then because we lead boring lives. But there was one at 3 o'clock, and maybe this is why we never made it to 11 o'clock. The 3 o'clock happy hour session got a fair working over most days, particularly sea days. When we're in port, we often didn't make it back for the afternoon happy hour, but it was very popular. And it was interesting because it was really popular with Tina and Will. Will's only 14. He just loved the mocktails. He really, really loves mocktails. He liked ordering a mocktail. Quite the young gentleman, quite the young, sophisticated gentleman with increasingly expensive tastes. It's going to be interesting to see what he's like when he's 21. So obviously there was a bit of a focus on selling alcohol, and it's interesting the ways that they did this. So there was a couple of things that made it much more experiential than just straight transactional. So they had cocktail making sessions where the bar team would come out, they would tell a story about their cocktails, and then they would get people up to, shake the cocktails and help them with it. And then, of course, you could drink the cocktails, which was epic. They did wine tasting seminars as well. And we went to a couple of these where the sommeliers would go through the story of the wines, how they were selected, what it was, the food pairings that they would go with them. So the kitchen would often cook up some food. And this wasn't a big event. It was mid-afternoon. So small tastes of each of the wine, along with some canapes or cheeses to accentuate the ways that those food pairings would go along. Once again, educating the customers to what it was around wine and food pairings, because this is one of those things that can be quite intimidating to a lot of people. They don't feel confident in picking a wine that they think that they'll like, or they're too confused by the wine menu to actually make a bold selection in it. This was one of the ways that they were sort of empowering their customers to be more adventurous when they were exploring the wine menu, but also creating an experience so that people now feel more knowledgeable about the wine. One of the experiences that people go, yes, this is why I enjoy cruising. And they did a similar sort of thing with the food. There were often classes that you could attend where the chef would give a demonstration of the kind of food that he liked to cook. So their chef would come out, he would go through some of the dishes, cook them up, plus or minus the sommelier, telling a bit of a story about wine pairings. And the thing that was really interesting about this was that they would then finish off with a tour through the kitchen. Now, their kitchen, probably a little bit different to yours because of the fact that they are churning out thousands and thousands of meals every day, probably 10,000 meals in a day. So multiple kitchens, multiple very commercial kitchens, large kitchens, with lots of chefs working really hard to produce that many meals per day. Yep, I just had a look then. So Sapphire Princess, 2,670 guests when she's fully loaded, which is probably most of the time, because the cruise industry fundamentally understands that if there's no one in a cabin and the ship sets sail, then that's revenue that they've lost. So they work really hard around making sure that every cabin is full, and a crew of 1,100. So that is 3,700 people on the ship and 3 square meals a day. That puts you at over 10,000 meals. So most people have never been through a kitchen like that. The tour gave you some insights into the kind of processes that they used and the way that they planned their day. Now, I think that for most restaurants, probably not that interesting. Chef's Table, though, eminently interesting. And we're going to be doing a podcast where we went to dinner by Heston a little while ago, and we were lucky enough to get a Chef's Table there. Really interesting experience. Lots that we learnt from that. And at the end of the day, I think it's just great theatre. It's like watching a live version of MasterChef or one of those cooking shows. And I think that for most people, the tour of the kitchen's probably not going to be super exciting, but it can, of course, be done with cooking classes. And we're seeing more and more chefs who are running, during the day. If you don't do a lunch menu, or you do a lunch menu, but it's not that profitable for you, there are more and more people who are going to cooking. They're watching these cooking shows. They want to be more empowered in the kitchen. We're all very time poor, particularly, and I find that there's a lot of people who are doing, these little dinner parties with all of their friends. They want to be able to smash something out pretty good. They don't want it to be overly traumatic. This is where the cooking class comes into it, particularly if you're a chef or you've got a chef with a great personality, engaging, witty, and happy to share some of those techniques. These kind of things can work really well. We're doing more and more websites for chefs who are wanting to have that online booking facility for their cooking classes, and I think that's a really interesting way of doing it as well. There was a lot of other things that they did on the cruise. We had a crossing the line ceremony where I think it was shellbacks and pollywogs, that was lots of fun. Will actually volunteered for that. So he was really well and truly in the thick of it as we crossed the equator. Champagne Pyramid. Now, I've only heard of these. I've never seen one before. They got lots of champagne glasses out. The old school champagne glasses, which I'd quite like a set of those. I think they look quite stylish. Obviously, they don't hold the bubbles for very long, but they're still quite stylish. A really high pyramid. And, the amazing thing was that people could come along and pour a bit of champagne into the champagne pyramid. And, of course, the photographer for the cruise was there. Now, you could get your own photos there. They were selling photos, which is one of their little revenue streams, selling photos from the cruises, because it's the memories that's the big thing that you get left to hold on with. And so there was a lot of people, I think, who were buying the photography packages. But I think the other thing that I thought was really, really interesting is that a lot of the staff were really keen to take a photo of you with your camera. And I think that's because Princess is a company that fundamentally understands the power of social media. They want people to get that photo. Here's the four of us having a cruise. We're having a great time. That goes up on Facebook, and then that starts the conversation. Oh, wow, are you having a good time? Yeah, we're loving it. Oh, what cruise line are you on? Oh, we're on Princess. Oh, wow, that's cool. I might have a look. And that's how you get that social validation. Too many, and this is one thing that I've observed, there's a lot of chefs who don't like people taking photos of their food. And I've been in a couple of restaurants where people have actually said, oh, do you want us to turn the lights up a bit for you? Or they'll have lights that shine on so that you've got the light. Because this is the big issue with food photography. If you're taking the photo in a dimly lit area, it can be really, really hard to get a decent photo. There are people who are structuring their spaces so that it's a lot easier for people to take a photo that really does justice to the food that you are creating for them. So, we've covered a bit of ground. I think the take-home message for this is that Princess... Oh, actually, before we wrap up, loyalty, the resell. So the resell for the next cruise, that starts while you're there. They'll have discount offers for you to come back on your next cruise. There's someone there dedicated to selling cruises. This is something that you need to be really thinking about. It's a lot easier to... Anyone who's gone to your restaurant knows that you produce epic food and that it's really good value and that it's super exciting and it's a really good experience. So it's a lot easier to sell to them to come back than it is than to get a new customer where you've got to convince them that, you're looking for the social validation, you're looking for all of the proof, the testimonials. You don't need that for a repeat customer because they know it's like, yeah, that restaurant's epic. Yeah, I will go back there because it's been a long time since I've had their signature dish. And I am in the mood for some of their cuisine, whatever that may be. Loyalty, start thinking about it. They build the email databases. And it's interesting, we've been doing some data mining of our restaurants' databases just to have a look at how many contacts and people have got in there. And there are so many restaurants now that have got 1,000 emails in their email database, which means that you can start to run campaigns that are really effective. You can start to move the dial, particularly on a Tuesday or a Wednesday night with 1,000 people in your database. That's really cool. Some of them have got 5,000, which is even cooler. So because, they're really starting to make really big money when they send out those email campaigns. You've got to be thinking about turning them from that new customer into a repeat customer. Obviously, Princess has got a lot more resources to be able to do that, and they really put a lot of effort into making sure that your experience is epic so that you will come back, because it's not a small ticket item. For a cruise, it's a lot of money that you're going to be socking away. They want you to think, and they do a really good job of it, that it's a really good value and that that's an epic holiday, because that makes it easier for you to come back. And I know we're already looking at what we would like to do this year as a cruise. So yes, what they do is they do a really good job about creating experiences, and food and bev are a fundamental part of that when you are cruising. And so they really have delved into all of the ways that they can micro-target people with interesting and colourful experiences that are memorable, because when you're on a holiday, that's what it is that you want. The upsells around the alcohol, because of course that's one of the things where you're actually paying for it, whether it's through a package, their drinks packages, or whether you're just paying each time, with your little card. But I think The amazing thing, the thing that I'm always in awe of is, so some of the meals that came out were just absolutely amazing, really yummy. They do all of that while they're on a ship. And I think there's a little bit of a message in there that, if they can do that, and obviously they've got a lot of resources, but at the end of the day, they're on a ship. They're socking out 10,000 meals a day on a ship, and each of those meals taste completely epic. There's something in that for everyone, I think, that we should be trying to delve that little bit deeper and trying to make the experiences that we create for our customers more meaningful for them, and to make the food just that little bit more epic for them. Because if these guys can do it on a ship, then surely you can do that in your restaurant. I will leave you with that thought, and so stay tuned for the next episode, which will probably what we learned from eating at the chef's table at Dinner by Heston. Bye.
Want more customers for your restaurant, cafe or takeout? Every month, our marketing tools and information are used by thousands of restaurant owners just like you to help them find more customers and turn them into repeat customers. All of our tools and information is designed specifically for restaurant owners. We know you don't have a lot of time to spend marketing or learning complicated procedures, so our tools are quick and easy to use. If you're looking to increase your revenue and profits or want to work less hours, check out marketingforrestaurants.com.